They call me Doña Martita here, even the guards, even the other inmates. It's respectful, I suppose. An acknowledgement of my age. I'm 78 years old, the oldest woman in this facility, been here 8 years now, sentenced to 15 for culpable homicide and concealment of a body. I'll die here, that much is certain. No parole at my age, no mercy for what I did after. My name is Marta Quiñones. I was born in Azul, Buenos Aires province, in 1947, raised in a time when women were expected to be quiet, obedient, useful. I was all those things, married at 21 to a man who worked for the railway. Had one son. Moved to Buenos Aires in 1975, looking for better opportunities during difficult times. My husband died in 1998. Heart attack. Sudden. One moment he was reading the newspaper, the next he was gone. Our son had already moved to Mendoza by then. He has his own family. We talk maybe twice a year. Obligatory calls on my birthday and Christmas. He hasn't visited since I've been here. I understand. Who wants a murderer for a mother? After my husband died, I needed work. I was 51, no formal education beyond primary school, no marketable skills except cleaning and organization. I became a building superintendent, what we call a portera, lived in a small ground floor apartment in exchange for maintaining the building, collecting rent, dealing with repairs and complaints. The building on Pueyrredon Street became my entire world. 6 floors, 12 apartments, old construction from the 1940s, beautiful mouldings, high ceilings, but perpetually falling apart, pipes that leaked, walls that cracked, tenants who complained about everything. I was good at my job, kept the entrance spotless, made sure the elevator was maintained, knew every pipe, every wire, every weak floorboard in that building. It was mine, not legally, I didn't own it, but in every way that mattered, that building belonged to me. I lived there for 19 years, watched tenants come and go, young couples who'd argue loudly, then move out, families with children who'd scratch the walls, old people who'd die and whose relatives would empty the apartments in a weekend, erasing years of life in trash bags. Nora Salvatierra moved in next door to me in 2005. She was 61 then, recently widowed, like me. At first we were friendly, both alone, both older women, both living in ground floor apartments with a shared wall between us. We'd have coffee sometimes, talk about the building, the neighborhood, the way things used to be. But proximity breeds contempt. That's what they say, and it's true. When you live wall to wall with someone, you hear everything. Every flush, every footstep, every television program, every phone call. Privacy becomes a fiction you maintain by pretending you don't hear what you clearly hear. The problems started small. Nora complained about noise from my apartment, said I vacuumed too early in the morning. I told her I vacuumed at 7:30, which was perfectly reasonable. She said on Saturdays people should be allowed to sleep. I said if you're retired, every day is Saturday and the world doesn't stop for lazy people. Then there was the water issue. The building had old pipes. Always problems with humidity, leaks, mold. My bathroom shared plumbing with Nora's kitchen. When she ran her washing machine, which she did constantly, sometimes twice a day, water would seep through our shared wall. I could see the stains spreading on my bathroom wall, smell the mildew. I complained to her multiple times. She said it wasn't her problem, that the pipes were old, that I should talk to the building owner about repairs, but I was the superintendent, Repairs came out of the building budget, which was barely enough for essentials, and besides, the leak was clearly from her excessive water use. We stopped having coffee, stopped talking except when necessary, which was often because we shared that wall, shared the entrance area, shared the small patio in the back where we both hung laundry. Over the years, our interactions became purely antagonistic. She'd make noise deliberately, I'm certain of it, vacuum at midnight, play her television loud. I'd respond in kind, move furniture early in the morning, run water when I knew she was trying to sleep. The other tenants noticed, would make comments. You and Doña Nora fighting again, like it was entertainment for them, like our mutual hatred was amusing. But it wasn't amusing to me. That apartment was my home, my only home, and Nora's presence, her noise, her water usage, her very existence next door was a constant invasion, a violation of the peace I'd tried to maintain. By 2018, we'd been neighbours for 13 years. 13 years of escalating hostility. We'd stopped even pretending to be civil, would deliberately time our comings and goings to avoid each other. If I was in the entrance mopping, she'd wait inside her door until I finished. If she was hanging laundry, I'd wait until she left the patio. The water stain on my bathroom wall had spread, became a large, discoloured patch, soft to the touch, mould growing underneath. I could smell it, could feel it affecting my breathing. I complained to the building owner multiple times. He said he'd send someone. No one came. I confronted Nora again, told her she needed to reduce her water usage, that she was destroying my wall, that the mould was making me sick. She laughed, actually laughed, said, "Maybe you should move out then, find somewhere else to be superintendent, like I could just leave, like I had anywhere else to go." That was in May 2018. The humidity was getting worse with autumn rains. I could see water literally dripping down my wall after she ran her washing machine. I put buckets underneath, hung towels to absorb the moisture. Nothing helped. In June, I filed a formal complaint with the building owner, submitted it in writing, documented the damage, included photos. He responded that both apartments needed to share the cost of repair, that he'd deduct it from both our rents, or in my case, from my salary. I was furious. Share the cost, when the problem was entirely Nora's doing, when I was the one suffering the damage. I showed the letter to Nora, demanded she take responsibility. She refused, said she'd also been having problems with humidity, that maybe the leak was coming from my apartment into hers, which was absurd. The water clearly flowed from her side to mine. We argued in the entrance hall, loud enough that other tenants came out to watch. It was humiliating, two old women shouting at each other about water stains, but I couldn't let it go, couldn't let her win. The building owner eventually sent a plumber, July 2018. The plumber looked at both apartments, examined the shared wall, ran tests, concluded that the main pipe between our two units needed to be replaced. Estimated cost, 20,000 pesos, to be split between Nora and me, with the building covering the labor, 10,000 pesos. That was nearly 2 months of my salary, money I didn't have, money I couldn't afford to lose, all because Nora used too much water. I tried to negotiate, told the owner it should be Nora's responsibility entirely. He refused, said the pipe was shared infrastructure, that legally both tenants had to split the cost. I told Nora we needed to discuss payment arrangements. She said she'd pay her half when she had the money, which could be months. Meanwhile, my wall was rotting, My apartment smelled like decay, and I was expected to just wait. That's when I stopped sleeping. The stress, the anger, the financial worry, it kept me awake at night. I'd lie in bed hearing Nora's television through the wall, hearing her moving around, knowing she was right there, on the other side, completely unconcerned with the damage she'd caused. On August 14th, 2018, it rained heavily. By evening, water was pouring down my bathroom wall, not seeping, pouring. I could hear Nora's washing machine running. In the middle of a rainstorm, she was doing laundry. I snapped. I went to her door and pounded on it. She opened it with that smug expression she always had when she knew she'd gotten under my skin. I said, "You need to stop the washing machine, right now. The wall is flooding." She said, "I'm in the middle of a cycle. It'll be done in 20 minutes. I said, 20 minutes will cause more damage. Turn it off now." She said, "No, you're not my boss. You might be superintendent of this building, but you don't tell me what to do in my own apartment." She started to close the door. I put my hand on it, preventing it from closing. She pushed harder. I pushed back. We were both in the doorway, that shared threshold between the hallway and her apartment. She was pushing the door toward the frame. I was pushing it back open, and then she shoved, hard, with both hands against the door. The force of it threw me backwards, but I didn't fall alone. The momentum of her shove, combined with my resistance, made her stumble forward through her own doorway. There are 3 steps down from the entrance hall to the interior hallway of the ground floor apartments. An old architectural quirk. Just 3 small steps, each maybe 15 centimeters high. Nora stumbled through the doorway and missed the first step. Her foot found air instead of floor. She pitched forward, arms windmilling, unable to catch herself. She fell down all 3 steps. I watched it happen in what felt like slow motion, but was probably 2 seconds. Watched her body tumble, unable to right itself. Heard the crack when her head hit the tile floor at the bottom. Then silence. She lay there crumpled at the base of the stairs, not moving. Blood pooling slowly from beneath her head. The washing machine still running in the background. The sound of rain against windows. I stood frozen, my hand still on her door, my mind unable to process what had just happened. I didn't push her. I want that to be clear. I did not push Nora Salvatierra down those stairs. She fell because of her own momentum, her own shove, her own loss of balance. It was an accident, but what I did next, that wasn't an accident. I should have called for help immediately, should have called an ambulance, the police, someone, should have tried to revive her, check for a pulse, render aid. I didn't. I stood there for what might have been 5 minutes, or 20, I lost track of time. Just stood there, looking at her body, at the blood, at the stairs. And I thought, this is my fault, even though I didn't push her, even though it was an accident. Everyone will say it's my fault. They'll say we were fighting, that I caused this, that the crazy old superintendent finally killed her neighbor. And I thought, no one saw. The building was quiet. It was evening, raining. People were in their apartments. No one witnessed the fall. No one heard her scream. She hadn't screamed. Happened too fast. And I thought, if I call for help, my life is over. Even if they believe it was an accident, there will be investigations, questions, suspicion. I might go to prison. At minimum, I'll lose my job, my apartment, my entire life. So I made a decision. a decision that haunts me more than the accident itself. I closed her door, carefully, quietly, as if she might wake up, as if she wasn't lying dead at the bottom of those stairs. I went back to my apartment, sat in my kitchen, listened to the rain. The washing machine in Nora's apartment eventually stopped. The building was silent. I waited until midnight. Then I went back to Nora's apartment, let myself in with my superintendent's master key. She was still there, still dead. The blood had stopped spreading, begun to dry. I cleaned the blood, mopped it up with towels from her bathroom, put the towels in a plastic bag, cleaned the tiles until no trace remained visible. Then I dragged her body, and dragging is the right word. She was heavy, dead weight is real, into her bedroom, laid her on her bed, covered her with blankets, made it look like she was sleeping. I locked her apartment from the inside and left through her window, which opened onto the back patio, climbed out. Difficult at 74, but I managed, closed the window behind me, went back to my apartment, and then I waited. 3 days passed. No one checked on Nora. She had no close friends in the building. Her family lived in the provinces. She was retired, no job to miss her. Just another old woman alone in Buenos Aires. On the 4th day, another tenant mentioned they hadn't seen Doña Nora, asked if I knew if she'd gone somewhere. I said I hadn't seen her either, suggested maybe she'd visited family. Week passed, then 2. People started to worry. The tenant from 4B asked me to check on her since I had keys. I acted reluctant, said I didn't want to invade her privacy, but eventually, with several tenants watching, I used my key to open her door. I called out as I entered, "Doña Nora, are you here?" Walked slowly toward the bedroom. Let the following tenants see me discover her body. Let them hear me gasp, see me stumble back in shock. They called the police. The police came, examined the scene. The medical examiner estimated she'd been dead approximately 2 weeks. Cause of death, traumatic head injury. But because the body had been in bed, covered with blankets, positioned as if sleeping, they initially suspected natural causes. Perhaps she'd fallen in her bedroom, hit her head, crawled to bed. It might have ended there. Tragic accident. Elderly woman dies alone. Happens all the time. But the investigation continued. They found inconsistencies. The fall pattern didn't match the bedroom. The blood I'd cleaned had left faint traces. Luminol revealed them. The window I'd climbed through had marks where it had been opened from inside and closed from outside. They questioned me extensively. I maintained I'd found her just as they had, that I knew nothing more, but neighbours talked, told police about our conflicts, about the water disputes, about the argument on August 14th. Someone had heard us, apparently, heard raised voices, a door slamming. The forensics came back. Nora had died from a fall, but not in her bedroom. The angle and force of the head injury suggested a fall from height, like downstairs, like the 3 steps in her entrance hallway. They arrested me in October 2018. Charged with culpable homicide without intent to kill, but with negligence or recklessness, and with concealment of a body and obstruction of justice. My court-appointed lawyer was young, overworked, barely competent. He advised me to plead guilty to reduced charges. I refused initially, insisted it was an accident, that I'd panicked. The prosecutor argued that my concealment showed consciousness of guilt, that if it had truly been an accident, I would have called for help, that my elaborate staging of the scene demonstrated criminal intent. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Witnesses testified about our conflicts, about the arguments, about my complaints regarding noise and water. The prosecution painted me as obsessed, unstable, violently angry. The forensic evidence was damning: the cleaned blood, the staged bedroom scene, the window exit, the 2-week concealment. My lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity due to age and stress. That I'd panicked in the moment and made poor decisions. The prosecution argued I'd had weeks to come forward and never did. The jury convicted me. The judge called it a tragic escalation of a petty dispute, followed by a calculated cover-up that showed callous disregard for human life and dignity. I was 74 years old. They gave me 15 years. At my age, it's a death sentence. I've been here 8 years. Federal Women's Prison in Ezeiza. I'm in a wing for elderly and infirm inmates. The cells are slightly larger, the medical care slightly better. But it's still prison. My son visited once in the first year. We sat in the visiting room, unable to speak. What do you say? He finally asked if I really did it. I told him it was an accident, but I'd made it worse by hiding it. He left. Haven't seen him since. I have no other visitors, no friends. They all lived in the building, and I'm told the building owner hired a new superintendent within days of my arrest. My life there, erased as if I'd never existed. The other inmates treat me with a mixture of respect and pity. Doña Martita, the old lady who killed her neighbor over water damage. Some find it almost funny, the pettiness of it. Others understand. Many of them are here for crimes born from poverty, proximity, and pride, not so different from mine. Do I regret not calling for help immediately? Every single day. That's the truth. If I'd called an ambulance right away, this would be different. Nora might have lived, though the doctors said the head injury was severe enough that she probably died within minutes. But maybe not. Maybe she could have been saved. And even if she couldn't, at least I wouldn't be here. The prosecutor himself admitted that if I'd called for help immediately, I likely wouldn't have been charged at all. It clearly was an accident, a terrible accident. But the cover-up made it criminal. So yes, I regret that decision, that moment of panic and calculation that destroyed what remained of my life. Do I regret the argument that led to her fall? That's more complicated. I was defending my home, my space, my rights. Nora was causing damage and refusing to take responsibility. Our argument was justified, even if the outcome was tragic. But maybe I could have walked away. Maybe I didn't need to hold that door. Maybe I could have just let her close it, gone back to my apartment, dealt with the water damage, paid the 10,000 pesos, moved on. Pride stopped me. Pride and territoriality and the bone-deep belief that I was right and she was wrong, and I couldn't let her win. That pride cost Nora her life, cost me my freedom, cost both of us everything. The water stain is probably still there, growing, spreading, rotting the wall between our 2 apartments. Or maybe the new superintendent fixed it. Maybe it's gone like we're both gone. 2 old women who lived side by side for 13 years and ended in death and prison over pipes and water and stupid, endless pride. I think about that building sometimes. Wonder who lives in my apartment now, who lives in Nora's. If they get along, or if proximity breeds the same contempt it bred in us. I think about Nora more than I'd like to admit, about how she looked lying at the bottom of those stairs, how her blood looked spreading across the tile, how her body felt heavy and lifeless as I dragged it to her bed. I tell myself she died quickly, that she didn't suffer. The medical examiner said the head trauma would have caused immediate unconsciousness. She probably didn't feel pain, that's something, but she died alone, died in conflict with her neighbour, died over something as stupid and mundane as water damage, and then lay dead in her apartment for 2 weeks, staged in her bed like a doll, while I went about my business pretending nothing had happened. That's the part that haunts me most. Not the fall, that was an accident, but the after, the coldness with which I cleaned her blood, the calculation with which I arranged her body, the ease with which I lied. I didn't know I was capable of that, of such cold-blooded pragmatism, such complete suppression of conscience. But I was. That's who I turned out to be when tested. The psychologist here says I have situational sociopathy, that I'm capable of normal empathy in most contexts, but shut it off when threatened. Maybe that's true, or maybe I'm just a coward who chose self-preservation over decency. I have 7 years left on my sentence. I'll be 85 if I make it that far. My health is declining. High blood pressure, arthritis, chronic pain in my back from sleeping on prison mattresses. The doctor says I'm at high risk for stroke. If I die here, will anyone claim my body? Will my son come for the funeral? Or will I be buried in the prison cemetery, a numbered grave among other forgotten women? I don't know, don't much care, honestly. The woman I was, the superintendent of Pueyrredon Street, Doña Martita, who kept everything in order, she died 8 years ago. This is just the body, finishing its time. Sometimes I dream about the building, about mopping the entrance, checking the elevator, collecting rent, about my apartment with its small kitchen and the bathroom with the spreading water stain, about Nora next door, her washing machine running at all hours. In the dreams I go back to that night, August 14th, 2018, the rain, the argument, the door, the fall, and in the dreams I call for help. I scream for the other tenants. I try to save her. I do what I should have done, but then I wake up here, in this cell, and Nora is still dead, and I'm still the woman who dragged her neighbour's corpse to bed and pretended to find it 2 weeks later. That's who I am, who I'll always be now. Not the efficient superintendent, not the widow who kept going after loss, just the old woman who killed her neighbour and tried to hide it. The guards tell me time's up, that I need to return to my cell. That's fine. I have nowhere else to be. 7 more years of cells and schedules and remorse that comes too late to matter. I'm Marta Quiñones, Doña Martita, 78 years old. 7 years left if I survive them, and a dead neighbour who fell down 3 steps while I held a door. That's my confession. Not the one I gave in court. The real one. The one that includes every detail I remember, and many I wish I could forget. Nora Salvatierra died because of an argument over water damage, and she stayed dead because I chose my freedom over her dignity. And now neither of us has either.